The school bus stopped in the middle of the flooded highway, and then the little girl screamed from the back seat. "There's someone outside." Every child turned toward the dark window at the same time. Rain slammed against the glass so hard the road almost disappeared. Thunder shook the bus roof. The driver, Marcus Reed, tightened both hands on the steering wheel and looked into the mirror. A small white girl named Emily was pointing toward the trees. Marcus saw nothing at first. Then lightning flashed. A figure stood near the ditch, barely visible through the storm. The children screamed again. Marcus grabbed the radio. "Dispatch, this is bus 42. I have students on board. Road flooded. Possible person outside near mile marker 17. Only static," answered. The storm had killed the signal. Marcus looked at the children. "Everybody stay seated. Nobody moves." A boy near the front whispered, "Is he gonna hurt us?" Marcus didn't answer right away, because he didn't know. He only knew one thing. 23 children were on his bus, and he was the only adult standing between them and whatever was outside. He stepped down from the driver's seat and opened the bus door just enough to look out. Cold rain blasted his face. The figure near the ditch didn't move. "Hey," Marcus shouted. "You need help?" The person suddenly collapsed. Marcus's heart jumped. He turned back to the kids. "Stay inside. Lock this door after I step out." One child cried, "Don't leave us." Marcus softened his voice. "I'm not leaving you. I'm checking if somebody is hurt." The second Marcus stepped outside, the bus door closed behind him. Rain soaked him instantly. He ran toward the ditch, boots sinking into mud. When he reached the figure, he froze. It was a teenage boy, white, maybe 16, bleeding from his forehead, barely conscious. Marcus knelt beside him. "Can you hear me?" The boy whispered. "My sister." Marcus looked around. "Where?" The boy pointed weakly toward the woods. "Car. Water." Marcus turned and saw headlights flickering deep below the road, half hidden by trees. A car had slid off the highway into a flooded ravine. Marcus sprinted back to the bus and banged on the door. Emily opened it with shaking hands. "There's been an accident," Marcus said. "I need everyone calm. Older kids help the younger ones. Stay away from windows." A boy named Tyler stood up. "What about us?" Marcus looked him in the eye. "You listen to me, and everybody goes home." Then he ran back into the storm. The ravine was worse than he expected. Water rushed around the crashed car, rising fast. Inside the back seat, a little girl was crying. Marcus slid down the muddy slope, grabbed the door handle, and pulled. Jammed. He picked up a rock and smashed the window. The girl screamed. "It's okay," Marcus shouted. "I'm here to help." He pulled her through the broken window just as the car shifted deeper into the floodwater. She wrapped her arms around his neck, sobbing. By the time Marcus climbed back to the road carrying her, police lights finally appeared in the distance. Relief hit him for 1 second. Only one, because the first officer jumped out, saw Marcus carrying a crying white girl through the storm, and pulled his weapon. "Put the child down." Marcus froze. The children inside the bus started screaming. The little girl cried harder. "No, he helped me." But the rain, thunder, and panic swallowed her voice. The officer shouted again, "Put her down now." Marcus slowly lowered the girl to the ground and raised both hands. "I'm the bus driver," he said. "There's a crash in the ravine. Her brother is hurt." Another officer ran over and grabbed Marcus by the arm. "Turn around." Marcus stared at him. "Are you serious?" "Turn around." The children watched from the bus windows, horrified. Emily pressed her face to the glass and yelled, "He saved her." But outside, all the officers saw was a black man in the dark, a white child crying, and a story their minds had already started writing. Marcus was handcuffed beside his own school bus while paramedics rushed to the injured teenagers. Parents began arriving minutes later. Someone had called them after the route went missing. Cars lined the wet road. Mothers cried. Fathers shouted. Phones came out. One man pointed at Marcus. "Why is he in cuffs?" An officer said, "We're sorting it out. Sorting it out." Marcus almost laughed. The little girl he saved clung to a paramedic blanket and kept saying, "He got me out." But adults were louder. A woman screamed. Why was he carrying her? A father yelled, "Check his record." Marcus stood in the rain, hands cuffed behind him, while the children on his bus cried for him. Then, Emily did something no one expected. She opened the emergency window, climbed out onto the side ledge, and shouted, "You're all wrong." Everyone turned. Her mother screamed, "Emily, get down." Emily pointed at Marcus. "He told us to stay calm. He saved that girl. He saved all of us." The road went quiet. Then Tyler shouted from inside the bus, "She's right." Another child yelled, "He didn't do anything." Then another, and another. 23 children started shouting through the windows. "Let him go. He helped. He saved her. He's our driver." The officers looked shaken. Then the rescued teenage boy, still bleeding, lifted his head from the stretcher and whispered to a paramedic, "The bus driver saved my sister." The paramedic repeated it loudly. The boy says the driver saved the girl. Silence fell across the highway. The officer holding Marcus's arm slowly stepped back. Someone unlocked the cuffs. Marcus rubbed his wrists, rain dripping from his face. No one spoke. The first officer looked embarrassed. Sir, we had to be careful. Marcus looked at him calmly. Careful of what? The officer had no answer. Because the answer was standing in front of everyone. A black man saving a child had still looked like danger to them. The rescued little girl ran from the paramedic blanket and hugged Marcus around the waist. Thank you, she cried. Marcus gently placed one hand on her shoulder. You're safe now. Her mother walked over slowly, shaking. I'm sorry, she whispered. When I saw you holding her, I thought. Marcus nodded. I know what you thought. The woman broke down crying. The children were finally taken off the bus, one by one. Every child hugged Marcus before going to their parents. Some parents cried harder watching it happen, because their children understood what they had failed to see. The next morning, the story spread across the town. At first, the video showed Marcus in handcuffs. People online judged immediately. Then the full footage came out. The bus camera showed Marcus calming the children. The dash camera showed him running into the storm. A body cam showed the rescued girl saying, "He helped me," before officers even listened. Everything changed. But Marcus didn't feel like celebrating. 2 days later, the school held a meeting. Parents filled the auditorium. Teachers stood along the walls. The superintendent invited Marcus to speak. Marcus walked to the microphone slowly. He looked at the parents, then at the children sitting in the front row. I did my job, he said. That's all. The room stayed silent. Marcus continued. But that night showed me something. Children saw what I did. Adults saw what they feared. Several parents lowered their eyes. I'm not asking you to call me a hero, Marcus said. I'm asking you to ask yourselves why I had to be proven innocent after saving a child. No one moved. Emily stood up from the front row. She held a small yellow toy school bus in her hands. She walked to Marcus and gave it to him. So, you remember, we knew the truth, she said. Marcus stared at the toy for a long moment, then smiled. I'll remember. The room finally stood and applauded, but Marcus looked only at the children, because they had been the first to defend him, the first to tell the truth, the first to see him clearly, and as he held the small toy bus in his hand, Marcus understood something powerful. Fear had written the first version of that night, but children rewrote the ending. 3 days after the assembly, Marcus returned to his normal morning route. The sky was clear. The floodwater had disappeared. The roads looked ordinary again, but nothing felt ordinary. Parents waited beside bus stops with their children just like every school morning, only this time something was different. Instead of nervous silence, several parents smiled as Marcus pulled the bus to the curb. One father stepped forward before his daughter climbed aboard. He looked uncomfortable. I wanted to tell you something. Marcus opened the bus door. The man took a deep breath. The night of the storm, I was one of the parents yelling. Marcus nodded quietly. I remember. The father lowered his eyes. I watched the full body camera video. Marcus said nothing. The man continued. My daughter asked me why I believed strangers before I believed the man who protects her every morning. For a moment neither spoke. Then Marcus smiled gently. Children ask difficult questions. The father nodded. They do. He extended his hand. Marcus shook it. Thank you for bringing my little girl home every day. Marcus smiled. I'll keep doing my job. The little girl climbed aboard and waved at her father before sitting beside Emily. As the bus continued along its route, the atmosphere inside felt lighter. Children laughed again. They talked about homework, baseball games, birthday parties, and cartoons. For them, life moved forward quickly. Adults carried memories much longer. Later that morning, Marcus stopped at the final neighborhood before school. Only one student remained waiting. It was the little girl he had rescued from the flooded car. Her name was Sophie. She smiled nervously while holding her mother's hand. Marcus stepped off the bus. You don't have to ride if you're still scared. Sophie shook her head. I'm not scared anymore. She looked directly at him. Because I know who's driving. Marcus smiled. Her mother walked closer. I transferred her to this route. Marcus looked surprised. The woman continued. She asked if she could ride with the man who saved her. Marcus felt emotion building inside his chest. He simply nodded. Sophie climbed aboard and immediately sat beside Emily. Within minutes the two girls were laughing together like old friends. Marcus looked into the rearview mirror. Sometimes children healed faster than adults. That afternoon local television aired the complete rescue footage. For the first time, people saw everything. Marcus running into the storm. Marcus smashing the car window. Marcus carrying Sophie through rising floodwater. Marcus being handcuffed before officers checked the crash. The public reaction changed overnight. People who had rushed to judgment suddenly understood how quickly assumptions could become injustice. The police department later released an official statement acknowledging that Marcus had saved 2 lives before officers fully understood the situation. The statement also announced additional training, focused on avoiding assumptions during emergency responses. Marcus appreciated the effort, but he knew real change required more than policies. It required people. 1 week later, the school district organized a community appreciation picnic. Families gathered in the football field. Children played games while teachers served food. Marcus almost decided not to attend. He never enjoyed being the center of attention. But 23 students convinced him otherwise. As soon as he arrived, the children ran toward him. Someone had painted a large banner. "Welcome our hero." Marcus laughed softly. "I told you I'm not a hero." Emily smiled. "Too late." The children surrounded him. Tyler handed Marcus a small framed photograph. It showed the entire bus class standing together in front of bus 42. Every child had signed the border. Marcus carefully read each signature. Then he noticed something written across the bottom. "Thank you for coming back." His eyes remained on those words for several seconds. Because that was exactly what happened. He came back, when nobody would have blamed him for staying safe, when people doubted him, when officers questioned him, when strangers pointed at him. He still went back into the flood. The school principal stepped onto the small outdoor stage. She invited Marcus forward. The applause lasted nearly a full minute. Marcus stood quietly before the microphone. He looked at the children first, then the parents. Finally he spoke. "I've been called many things during my life." The crowd became silent. Some people judged me before they knew me. He paused. "But these children," he smiled toward bus 42, "they reminded me that courage isn't only running into danger." The audience listened closely. Sometimes courage is choosing to believe the truth, even when everyone around you believes something else. Several parents wiped away tears. Marcus looked toward Emily. She smiled proudly. "I wasn't alone that night." He continued. 23 children found the courage to speak when adults stayed quiet. The applause began again, much louder this time. After the ceremony ended, Sophie quietly walked over carrying something wrapped in blue paper. "It's for you." Marcus slowly opened it. Inside was a small wooden school bus carved by Sophie's grandfather. The tiny words painted underneath made Marcus stop breathing for a moment. "The driver who never drove away." Marcus looked at Sophie. "Thank you." The little girl hugged him tightly. As the sun slowly disappeared behind the football stadium, Marcus carried the wooden bus toward his truck. He placed it carefully beside the yellow toy bus Emily had given him days earlier. 2 simple gifts, made by children, worth more than any award. Before starting the engine, Marcus looked back toward the school. Parents laughed with their children. Teachers packed away decorations. Life had returned to normal once again. But Marcus knew every child who rode bus 42 would remember one lesson long after homework, tests, and classrooms were forgotten. The strongest person isn't always the loudest. The bravest person isn't always the one wearing a badge. And the most dangerous thing during any emergency isn't always the storm itself. Sometimes it's the speed with which fear convinces people to doubt the wrong person. The flood ended. The rain disappeared. The headlines faded. But every morning, as bus 42 rolled through the neighborhood, 24 children smiled at the same driver, not because he became famous, but because when the storm came, and everyone else was deciding who to blame, Marcus Reed chose the only thing that truly mattered. He chose to save lives first.